This is a presentation on the effects of short-term study abroad on self-perceptions of global competency in pre-service teachers. This is a summary of a study done by myself, Dr. Carrie Courtad, Dr. Olaya Landa-Vialard, and Lauralyn Randles.
So part of the purpose for this study was to understand the effects that short-term study abroad has on our teacher candidates' perceptions of their global competencies. We know that there has been a big push across the U.S. and for institutions of higher ed, including our own, to start to focus on a globalized education for students. And we wanted to see if short-term study abroads actually affect the global perception for our students. And we know we have lots of information about our students who participate in study abroad programs, and that we know that it's a very influential and we know it's a very influential experience for our students, but unfortunately not all of our students can take part of study abroad. And in fact, what we do know is that less than 1.5% of our total students in the U.S. who are enrolled in an institution of higher ed actually participate in an international study abroad experience. And we've even seen in our own institution and indeed our own college a big push for globalization. And the question was, do we think that our short-term study abroads actually have an effect on our teachers? We also know that there is an act that was created by one of our own senators, Dick Durbin, and Roger Wicker, who's out of Mississippi, who has created a program for aid to our students to help increase the globalization curriculum into teacher preparation programs. And this was an act that was created to serve actually undergraduate students who are studying abroad. And we know that teachers have to teach in an increasingly complicated and interconnected world. And this is a way, by investing in an international exchange, that we can better prepare our youth. And that is from our own senator in Illinois. We also know that global competence is the capacity and the disposition to understand and act on issues of global significance. And this, of course, is from Manzilla and Jackson. And then there is a lot of conversation about the 21st century skills, and that global competence is one of those skills. And Zinn and colleagues have decided that this is beyond just our Common Core. So in order to prepare our students who will be teaching in a pre-K-12 situation to be global citizens, we also need to prepare our pre-service teachers. And that study attempted to do just that. So we defined short term as summer programs under 8 weeks. And we focused on study abroad that was a faculty-led academic trip to another country. And then, of course, we defined pre-service teachers as undergraduate students studying to be a teacher. We used a survey that was created by Zinn, Accardo, Schoof, Cormier, and Dorman, which was a study that was completed in 2016. And we garnered permission from Zinn to use the survey, and they had a strong validity and reliable survey that they had created, and we modified it to include some of the information that we needed. So it was a 16 question using a Likert scale on a scale from 4 to 1. And 4 was strong agreement and 1 was strong disagreement. We administered the survey twice, once before the departure and again after the trip was completed as a post-survey. And this was used to measure our teacher candidates' perception of global competency. The global competency knowledge survey was actually based on 4 themes from the Global Competence Matrix, and that looked at investigating the world, recognizing perspectives, communicating ideas, and taking actions. And this was what we used to measure the teacher candidates' perception of their own global competency. Some of the questions that we modified and asked were things that were related to who our students were. So we wanted to know their major, the year in school, the name of the study abroad program that they were participating in, the length or the dates. We were also kind of curious if the host country's first language was English. We also asked if there was a study abroad language requirement to travel. We also asked some short answer questions at the end. And we asked questions about what they gained or what they hoped to gain and what they thought they gained from their experience, and maybe some of the biggest challenges and any other thoughts that they wanted to share. We also asked them about how many hours did you spend in the pre-K 12 schools while they were on their trip. And this was kind of interesting because even though programs apparently did the same amount of hours, they ranged vastly. So after we looked at the surveys, we did reach out to the faculty leaders and ask them again for a number that we did assign to the participants of each study as to the reported hours in the schools. So questions that we asked were, do you understand what global knowledge means? And I have learned to identify culture and explain the significant impact on learning. And there were 15 other questions besides this one, ending with the 16th question, which is, I'm able to advocate for and contribute to the improvement of culturally responsive teaching. So we obtained consent and pre-survey data when students were gathered with faculty study abroad advisor and study abroad advisors. We'd like to thank you for allowing us to come into your meeting and explaining our purpose of the study and gaining consent and then completing the survey. The post surveys were sent through an email to a student provided email address. So we used the email address that the student gave us at the end of the, or actually on the consent form, and then we asked them several times to remind them to try and complete the survey. In the beginning, we had, for the first survey, we had nearly 65 participants that filled out pre-survey information. After their trips and when reaching out by email and having them complete the survey online, we only ended up with 29 survey results. So we only got approximately half of the surveys returned or that they logged on to complete. So we started off with a simple paired t-test to look at the significant difference of the whole group means between how a teacher candidate rated themselves in the global competencies. So on average, what we know, or I'm sorry, overall, teacher candidates rated themselves higher in the post survey on global knowledge. And that was statistically significant, and I will show you that screen right there. So what we did is we summed the answers. So instead of taking an average, we did it average and sum, but we summed everything and we did a sum pre. We paired it with the sum post, and we looked at if there was a difference in their means, and there was indeed. And it was significant with a p-value of 0.000. So that was one way that we looked at. Now, the other way is we started to categorize what other differences could we see in their pre and post. So we looked at categorizing the data by the destination of the study abroad, and that was the individual study abroads, by the length of the study abroad. So was it 10 days or was it 3 weeks? We looked at the student's year in school. We looked at the contact hours that they reported in the schools, and we looked at the major. And when we looked at these groups, there was not a statistical significant difference in the post means. So the other item that was a little problematic is when we started to parse out the means by the groups, we started to lose our N value in the cells. So it was a little more difficult to compare means or even look at the raw data because we had quite a variance in the return response. So that became problematic of parsing our data out further. So what we did do instead is we categorized our destinations by two. And that was the Western European countries versus non-Western European countries. And what we discovered is there was a significant difference in means based on those destinations. Now, this probably shouldn't come as a surprise. So remember, this is measuring the post survey in a student's global competencies. So we know that they had a growth. We know that regardless of the program they went on, students showed a growth in the pre and post. But what we also noticed is considering the destination, whether it was non-Western European or a Western European, the non-Western European participants in that study abroad actually had a more significant growth than those who went to a Western destination, a Western European destination, which actually makes sense because when they go to a Western, well, I'll talk about that in a little bit. This was the questions, the Likert questions, so questions 1 through 16. In the blue, you see the pretest, and in the post is green. And you can see, even if just by visually inspecting, that question 3 had quite a difference between the pre and the post. And there were two others that also had large changes, and one of those was question 14. Some of these are preliminary data. We are still looking at how to parse the data as we write this. We want to look at the questions and the categories of the questions and figure out what exactly which questions students grew the most on. When we did an item analysis, there was a statistically significant difference in every question from the pre to the post. So then it becomes a matter of which ones were the most statistically significant, and we're still in the process of figuring out those questions. So overall, what we know is, the good news is that our short-term study abroad in the College of Ed does have a positive effect on global competency. So regardless of the intended teaching major, there was a significant positive difference from pre-survey to post-survey in how teacher candidates rated themselves in global knowledge. And that we can draw from this conclusion that short-term study abroad has a positive effect on pre-service teachers' perception of their own global competencies, which is a great, significant finding. It is a cause for us to encourage and continue our study abroad programs. And the other issue that we should consider now is that we have Western and non-Western European destinations. So while no matter what program they traveled on, we know that non-Western European destinations had a larger impact or a greater impact on the post-survey of our students. And it appears to be a significant result, and one that for us, that we feel as investigators that really needs to be investigated a little bit more with the data that we've been given. There is a caveat on the non-Western European destinations versus the Western European destinations. When I spoke earlier about parsing out our data by category, when you start to look at Western versus non-Western European, we had about half of the participants in the non-Western European category than we did the Western European destination, which is fairly typical of study abroad situations across institutions in the U.S. That our students, like other U.S. College students, have a tendency to choose Western European destinations over the non-Western European destinations. And I think we can make quite some assumptions about why they do that. But what we do know is that if they choose a non-Western European destination, that their global competency has a larger growth. So overall, what we did learn is the most significant changes from the pre-service perception of global competency to the post were usually in the following question stems. So, learning to use a variety of domestic and international sources to address global awareness, they rated themselves higher. These were the three stems that seemed to pop out and again warrant further investigation. So that is the ability to plan a lesson based on varied cultural perspectives and the ability to understand differential access to knowledge, resources, and technology affecting people's lives, culture, and perspectives. So overall, we can come away with saying that in the College of Education at Illinois State University, our short-term study abroad is having a positive effect in the terms of global knowledge on our pre-service teachers. We can also conclude that non-Western European destinations may have a larger growth in this global knowledge than Western European destinations. But we also know that more research is needed to track our students studying abroad. We also understand that this comes with some limitations. About 50% of our students or our potential participants did not complete a second survey, which then resulted in a skewed perspective as to why did the students who filled out the second survey, did they have a better experience? Did they feel better about their experience? And that is why they filled out the survey the second time. The other question is that if we had gotten more participants to fill out the second survey, we might not see the difference in the Western versus non-Western destinations, European destinations. But that remains to be seen. At this point, this is a bit of conjecture as to why people did not fill out the surveys. So this brought in some of our limitations. The post-survey, like I said earlier, the return rate was only 50%. The numbers across the destination were not equal. And this survey is the only measure, and it measures just the perception of the student. So it is relying on the student to report positive items. So we were very happy to see some positive results. We believe that we would like to take this further and encourage our students to participate in the post-survey. We'd also like to encourage those students who travel to the non-Western European destinations to also finish the survey or complete the second survey so that we could have more robust data. So these are our resources. You can find our survey that we used in the last reference. If you have any questions, you can contact me. That's Carrie Courtad at CACourt, COURT, at ilstu.edu. We again would like to thank our study abroad faculty advisors who allowed us to come into your meetings and gather consent to participate. And I think some of the items that we will be working on as we progress further in our study is looking at how we can gather richer data. It would also be interesting to see how long the students perceive